Don't go. I can't live without you. A love destined to break and bloom again. Featuring Dylan Wang in a fictional romantic story. The soft rustling of autumn leaves swirled in the air like whispered secrets as dusk fell gently over the city. The golden sunlight lingered on the horizon, bathing the quiet street in an amber glow. It was a kind of evening made for lovers, except this one held the silence of a goodbye. Dylan Wang stood at the edge of the old bridge, his eyes locked on the figure walking away from him. Her long hair danced with the breeze, and every step she took felt like a stab to his heart. She wasn't crying, but he could see the pain in her posture, the tension in her shoulders, the hesitance in her steps. He finally broke. Don't go. I can't live without you. His voice cracked the silence, echoing with raw desperation. She froze. The wind stilled. Time, for a moment, refused to move. Dylan met Alara on the set of an indie film in the heart of Kyoto. She wasn't an actress, just a quiet set designer with ink-stained fingers and a heart full of poetry. He was a star of production, confident, charismatic, chased by fans and cameras alike. She had tried to remain invisible. He hadn't noticed her immediately. What drew him and wasn't her beauty, though she was beautiful, but her quiet defiance. She didn't chase him like others did. She spoke to him like a man, not a celebrity. She smiled at him like he was human, not a fantasy. He remembered the first time they spoke. You look tired, she said softly, handing him a cup of tea behind the set. You should rest. No one ever tells me that, he replied, startled. Then maybe no one really sees you, she whispered. That was the beginning. Between filming and script rehearsals, Dylan found solace in Alara's world. She would bring him notes scribbled with poems, napkin sketches of dreamscapes, and sometimes just silence. The kind of silence that wasn't empty, but warm, like home. They walked through cherry blossom parks at midnight. They sat under old trees, shared street food, and traded secrets under a borrowed sky. Dylan learned she had once been a dancer, but an accident ended her career. When I swayed for the last time, she said, eyes distant, I knew the music, and I were never meant to grow old together. He never forgot that sentence. In return, he told her of his childhood, of loneliness, pressure, and how the spotlight sometimes felt like a cage. With her, he didn't have to be perfect. He could be Dylan, not Dylan Wang. They fell in love quietly, completely. But no love escapes the weight of the world. As their relationship grew, so did the scrutiny. Rumors bloomed like weeds. Alara became the target of jealous fans and relentless media. Paparazzi followed her home. Tabloids twisted her past. Netizens questioned her worth. Dylan tried to shield her. Don't look at any of it, he said. None of it matters. But it did. She began pulling away. I don't belong in your world, she told him one rainy evening. You shine too brightly. I'm just someone fading in the background. You light up my world, he argued. But the fear grew, and so did the silence between them. On a windy October evening, Alara left a letter on Dylan's table. No goodbyes, just words that broke him. You and I were destined to part from the moment you swayed. He understood. It was a reference to her past, her final dance, her loss, and the ache that never healed. But now he was the one losing. He chased her through the city. The streets blurred around him, his heart pounding louder than his footsteps. And then he saw her at the old bridge where they first watched the sunset together. That's when he shouted, voice trembling with truth. Don't go. I can't live without you. She stopped. Alara turned slowly, her eyes filled with unshed tears. I can't be the reason you fall apart, Dylan, she whispered. You have the world in your hands. I don't want the world, he stepped closer. I want you, but I'm broken. Then we'll be broken together, he said, voice shaking. I don't care if we were destined to part. I'll rewrite our fate if I have to. She looked away, trembling. I walked away because I was afraid of being a burden. You're my balance. What if I ruin you? You saved me. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she looked at him, truly looked at him. The man who once seemed unreachable, now standing before her, fragile and human. They stayed on that bridge until the stars came out, sitting side by side. saying nothing. That silence again, familiar and full. In the weeks that followed, Dylan made a quiet but bold decision. He took a break from acting, not to escape, but to breathe, to live. With her, they moved to a quiet seaside town. Dylan learned how to cook badly. Ilera returned to painting. They built a life made of moments, unpublished, unseen, but precious. He would sometimes quote her back to her, "You and I were destined to part." And she'd always finish with a smile, "But we chose to stay." Their love wasn't loud anymore. It wasn't fireworks or magazine covers. It was coffee in the morning, holding hands at markets, fighting over the last dumpling, and slow dances in the kitchen. One rainy afternoon, Dylan found her standing at the window, lost in thought. He walked up behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist, and whispered, "Don't go. I still can't live without you." She turned to him, smiling, "I'm not going anywhere." Years later, when the world had moved on to newer stars and shinier stories, Dylan and Ilera returned to Kyoto for a quiet visit. There, in the same studio where they had met, Dylan arranged something special. A single wooden floor, a spotlight, soft music. "Dance with me," he said. "I haven't danced in years," she laughed nervously. "Then sway. Just once." She hesitated, then stepped into his arms. Their bodies moved slowly, gently. The music curled around them like an embrace. For the first time in years, Ilera swayed, and didn't feel like something was being taken from her. When the music stopped, Dylan pressed his forehead to hers and said, "You and I were destined to part from the moment you swayed, but maybe, just maybe, love was destined to bring us back." The late afternoon sun filtered through the paper lantern strung above the Kyoto film set, casting a warm orange glow over everything it touched. The crew bustled about, focused on props, lighting cues, and camera angles. But in the corner, almost invisible in her silence, was Ilera. She had ink smudged on her fingers, a roll of sketches tucked under her arm, and a pencil behind one ear. Her eyes were intently focused on a mural she was quietly retouching, a cherry blossom tree against a faded sunset sky. She didn't even notice when Dylan walked past her, covered in stage dust and exhaustion. He had just finished an emotionally grueling scene and needed a breath, a moment to feel human again. And that's when he saw her, not notice in the usual sense. He'd seen hundreds of staff passing by daily, but this was different. Ilera didn't glance at him. She didn't fawn, blush, or stammer. She was completely immersed in her world. To Dylan, who was always being seen but rarely truly seen, this quiet indifference was magnetic. He took a few steps closer and cleared his throat, expecting at least a startle. Nothing. Just a calm, careful, the paint's wet. Dylan blinked. "Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt." "You didn't. But if you ruin this tree, I'll cry," she said without looking up, her lips curving ever so slightly. Later that evening, when the set quieted and everyone vanished for a break, Dylan found himself wandering back to the quiet corner where Ilera had been. She wasn't there, but sitting on a crate was a paper cup with steam curling from its top. A note was scribbled in pen on the lid. "You look tired. Rest is part of brilliance." He stared at the cup for a long time. No one had ever given him something so small that felt so big. He didn't even know her last name yet, but something inside his chest shifted. That night, he lay awake in his hotel room replaying the simple line, "Rest is part of brilliance." Who was this woman who spoke to him like a human and not a headline? The next day, Dylan sought her out. She was behind the wardrobe racks, arguing gently with a stylist about historical accuracy on a kimono sleeve. He waited until she finished, then approached like a curious child. "Hi, I'm Dylan. Thank you for the tea." She looked at him with a quiet smile. "I know who you are, and you're welcome. Can I sit?" She nodded. They ended up talking for hours in the garden behind the studio, surrounded by the faint glow of lanterns and the hum of crickets. She told him how she grew up in Hokkaido, how she used to dance by the river every spring, until her knee gave out during a regional competition. She didn't cry telling it, but her eyes did go distant. "And then?" he asked gently. "And then I found painting," she shrugged. "It's quieter, less applause, but also less pain. Dylan watched her fingers, graceful even in stillness, and imagined her dancing. He could see it so clearly, the way her body would move with poetry, not just technique. "Do you miss it?" he asked. She paused. "Every time the wind moves." That line hit him like thunder. A few days later, after a long filming sequence, Dylan surprised her. He brought a portable speaker, set it up in the empty hallway of the studio, and played a soft, instrumental waltz. She raised an eyebrow. "What is this?" "I want to see how the wind moved." Alara stared at him, heart thudding in her chest. "Dylan, no expectations, no pain, just sway," he said gently. She hesitated, her past clawing at her resolve. But something in his gaze, his quiet understanding, his genuine wonder, pulled her in. She stepped into the music. Her body remembered, even if her soul was cautious. Dylan stood by, mesmerized. She was no longer just a set designer. She was a poem brought to life. And though her movements were limited, every gesture was drenched in feeling. When she stopped, breathless, he whispered the words that would later haunt him. "You and I were destined to part from the moment you swayed." She looked at him, startled. "I'm not sure why I said that," he murmured, "but it feels true, like watching something too beautiful to keep." Her eyes glistened. That was the moment she began to fall too. Hidden moments, growing love. Over the next few weeks, they shared stolen moments in between scenes and setups. Quiet dinners in tucked-away ramen shops, laughed in the rain without umbrellas, games of drawing random objects in 5 seconds or less. He once dared her to sketch him with her eyes closed. The result was a disaster. He looked like a potato with eyebrows. "I have never felt more insulted in my life," he mock-dramatized. "You should retire," she teased, poking his shoulder. "From modeling, at least." But it wasn't just fun. Dylan opened up in ways he never had before. He told her about his mother's loneliness, his fear of being loved for his fame, the nights he lay awake wondering if he'd ever be enough without the cameras. Alara listened. She always listened. No judgment, just presence. She never asked for more than what he could give. That's what made him give her everything. One night, they walked along the canal, soft paper lanterns floating in the water like stars. The moonlight danced on her face, and Dylan stopped suddenly. "Alara," he said, voice low. She turned. "If I told you I think about you more than my next role, would that scare you?" She smiled. "Only if you stopped thinking about yourself, too." He stepped closer. "I don't want to lose this, even if it's fragile, even if the world finds out and tears it apart." She looked at him, heart wide open. "Then don't let go." That night, beneath a sky full of secrets, Dylan kissed her for the first time.